All right, it's episode number... What are we on these days? I think that you are ready. 61. This will be episode 62. Episode 62. Check one, check two, check. Ready to roll. All right, give me an audio there, cowboy.
Okay, 1 2 check 1 2 check 1 2 check 1 2 check 1 2.
You sound good.
Okay,
You sound very nice.
I sound high and whiny.
Yeah, let me give you.
That's what I normally sound like. Wah, wah.
All right, I think we got you. Okay, You ready?
Yeah, let's go.
I'm gonna do like a wind up, sort of like an intro.
Okay.
Here you go. This is Bird Shooter, and I'd like to welcome back Gary Drone Boy Vaughn to the show. We last spoke with him in episode 48 about his travels on the Inca Trail in Peru.
What episode's this?
This is episode number 62.
Whoa.
Yeah. And he recently chauffeured me to Trail Days, where I celebrated the 25th anniversary of my thru hike on the Appalachian Trail with the class of 94. And he graciously filmed us walking in the parade, although I later found out that about 5,000 people also filmed the parade.
Thank God, because we only got the end of the parade.
Exactly. Gary, welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So, what I thought we could do first, should I call you Gary or Drone Boy? Do you have a preference?
No, Gary.
Okay. He's more comfortable.
We're not on the trail.
Okay, I got you. That's fair. Thanks for making the drive, and you're recently in your... Let me say that again to clip. Gary, thank you for making the drive to the recently christened Bird Shooter Studios.
Oh.
You're the third live interview that we've had since its configuration.
Oh, really?
Yes.
It's much more impressive than us in Glasser's basement. That's what I was saying.
Yes. I see we're wearing Braves attire again as we had in Glasser's basement, so at least we're loyal to our team. So anyway, what I was hoping we could do today is share with the listeners our experience at Trail Days.
Yeah.
And we've got a live recording over here in the corner, so they can not just hear about Trail Days, they can see the live podcast interview. So thank you for that.
Pictures, yeah.
Do you want to give a quick plug to your YouTube channel? Because that's probably where this will show up, I guess.
It's just, we'll link it down below or wherever you download the podcast. It's basically, I think it's youtube.com/Gary Vaughn, VAUGHAN.
Excellent. No Drone Boy in the
No.
in the URL. Okay.
No, I think my high school, I started out with my high school nickname, Kubi.
Oh.
But then I just changed it back to Gary Vaughn since I'm no longer in high school.
Oh, well, that makes sense. Well, we picked a good day for this. I guess so, but it's a monsoon.
Yes.
All weekend, actually. So great day for a podcast. So first off, let's set the table for Trail Days. 2019, when I said you chauffeured me to Trail Days, that was legitimate. That actually happened. You drove, I got the treatment, your recently purchased Tesla.
Yes. We were the only Tesla at Trail Days.
Yes, and we're going to talk about that, which I admit that was an experience, Gary. What model of Tesla?
It's Model 3.
Model 3.
Model 3, it's the long range, so it's got a 310-mile range. So we were able to go from Atlanta to Asheville, and then Asheville to Damascus.
Okay.
Which I think we arrived with 79 miles left on the car. And Damascus is 25 miles from the Bristol Supercharger. So when we got there on Friday, I was kind of worried, okay, how many miles is it going to phantom drain over the weekend, because we weren't leaving until Sunday.
Yep.
So we were a little concerned, and I pulled up a couple of apps to try and see where the nearest charger was. And Bristol, 25 miles away, was the nearest charger. There's no level 2 charger. The only thing you can do is plug into like a regular household outlet that gets you 3 miles per hour.
And for the listeners that may not know, the Teslas are 100% battery powered. They use zero gas. They make no carbon emissions. It's incredibly quiet. Surprisingly peppy, I might add.
Yes. 0 to 60, I think mine goes in 4.3 seconds.
Wow. Impressive. And you've had this Tesla for how many months?
Just in September. So, essentially all of us Tesla owners who got the Model 3 early, probably anywhere between, I think the first one was delivered in March. So March through October, all of us who ordered early and took delivery early paid about $10,000 to $15,000 more.
Okay. Bonus.
Because he dropped the prices over the last, I think, month or two. So happy to help out the earth.
Yeah, well,
you're welcome, hippies.
There's some pretty strong tax credits there. Didn't you say there was like a $7,500?
So yeah, last year there was a $7,500 one, but since Tesla made over 200,000 vehicles, they've gotten the tax credit cut in half. So they're the only electric car manufacturer that gets that tax credit cut in half. Everybody else is $7,500. They're now at $3,750.
And believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, this is not a paid broadcast for Tesla. It just happens that we took the Tesla to Trail Days, which was an experience in itself, and I want to talk about that a little. First of all, let's talk about the electronics and the automation, because I fell asleep, I guess, somewhere after Asheville. And later I've discovered that you fell asleep at the same time, which scared the living hell out of me. And I guess it was somewhere south of Asheville on I-26. Do you want to talk about the automation in those things?
So I got the Autopilot, which has level 2 automation, which essentially means you can drive it, your hands are on the wheel, you're supposed to be paying attention. And we were on I forget what highway. I think we had just stopped at a dollar store, because we stopped at like $7 stores along the way.
Yeah, we're going to talk about that. That's on my list.
And we had stopped at a dollar store, and you kind of fell asleep, I think. And I remember looking over going, that son of a bitch, he's sleeping.
Oh, yeah.
And so I wound up just closing my eyes, because we were on a really straight stretch of road. There wasn't anybody around us. And I don't know if my eyes closed for 30 seconds, a minute, could have been 5 minutes. I just don't know. But I woke up and the car was changing lanes. So what happened was it pulled up on a car that was going slower than us. And there were 2 lanes. So it went to the passing lane to try and pass. That's what woke me up. And I think you woke up shortly afterwards too. But I didn't let you know that I fell asleep until we got to.
And I never slept again, Gary. I'll just have you know that. That was the last time I fell asleep in your car. Despite and just for the listeners, it's about a 5.5 hour drive from Atlanta to Damascus, about 320 miles. But we took the long route, which we're going to talk about too. But I did some quick math, Gary. I'm guessing I would have dropped $117 for a tank and a half of gas, right? I've got a F-150, so a big truck. How much did you spend on your electric?
Total was $16.
Beautiful. I love it.
It was, I think our longest charge, we went from, I think, 10% up to 99% in Asheville. And that got us 300 miles. And by the way, the Asheville, just so everybody knows, Superchargers for Tesla are typically at retail stores. And where we stopped in Bristol, remember we had breakfast at Bojangles.
Yes,
That was our first stop outside of Damascus. And then the only other charger that we hit was Asheville on the way up and Asheville on the way back. And that's at an outlet mall.
Yeah, and we hit Dick's Sporting Goods to load up on some last-minute supplies for Trail Days.
Yeah.
So that was convenient. And you got a free charge coming down from Roan Mountain after our hike.
Yes. So we went up to Roan Mountain, and I think I was at 140 miles at the top of Roan Mountain. And the way electric motors work is you get a recharge from regenerative braking. So every time you brake, it recharges your battery. Well, on the downhill from Roan Mountain, I don't know how high that is, what the altitude difference is, but I think we gained 16 or 18 miles on the way down.
That was pretty cool to watch, actually. It kept gaining miles on your battery. And you got a free charge at Trail Days. You want to talk about how you scored? Because there's no official charge station there.
Well,
right?
and let me thank the 2 security guards. So the last night, I think I had drained down to about 50 miles. So like I said, when we got there on Friday night, I think I was at 79 miles. But the Tesla has something called Sentry Mode, which is basically whenever somebody's standing next to the car, the cameras on the car, it has 8 cameras, and they will all record anybody looking into the car or passing by the car, or if a car hits the car, it records, what the actual accident. So those recordings seem to have drained about 20 miles from the car. So I was afraid the last night that we would be below the 25 miles to get to Bristol. And so I asked the security guards, I saw the vendors, and they had an outlet, just a regular 110 outlet that you have in your house. And I asked them, I said, would it be okay if I pulled my car around? And I remember the one guy, he was a big car guy. And he goes, I've never seen the Tesla. And then the other guy was kind of younger. He goes, I've never seen a car that expensive. So we wound up taking it back over there. I plugged it into a 110. I think when we left, I had gotten up to about 40 an additional 40 miles by the end of the night.
It took you all night because it was just a regular charger.
Took all night because it was just a 110. But that gave us the comfort. A lot of what people talk about is range anxiety with these electric cars. Because I didn't necessarily have range anxiety. I just wanted to make sure that we could make it to Bristol. And I didn't know how many mountains we'd have to go up. Yeah. So while the car says that I have 40 or 50 miles, if we had to go back up to like a Roan Mountain kind of situation in order to get to Bristol, we might have had a problem getting there.
Sure.
Even though it's only 25 miles. So we got up to about 90 miles by the end of when we got there on Sunday. I got back to my car on Sunday to start the drive. We were about 90 miles, so we had plenty.
And I'm pretty sure you were the only Tesla at Trail Days. On the polar opposite side of the spectrum, we went to Trail Days with another long time friend of Bird Shooter, the Camel, who has appeared on many podcasts with us previously. And he was the polar opposite in that he had a 300 F350 diesel dually pickup truck.
I think the ozone layer actually decayed while we were at Trail Days from him just sleeping in the truck.
But the funny thing was the older security guard, all he wanted to do was talk about the 350 diesel engine. Yeah. And the younger guy just wanted to talk to you about the
Tesla.
Yeah. But anyway, the trail is known for bringing all types together.
It was good. I mean, again, I think... it was funny because I think some people knew what a Tesla was. I think others just didn't. And it was kind of interesting. And I told you on the security footage when I pulled it off, there's a bunch of people just staring at it. So
awesome.
It's kind of interesting.
Awesome. Well, let's talk about Trail Days for a second, Gary. So this was my fifth Trail Days. I haven't been to a Trail Days since 1999. This was your first Trail Days. What were your expectations sort of going in?
My expectations were that it would be bigger than it actually was. And when I say that, I expected it was more like a small town kind of fair with tons and tons of people. More than just like your hometown folks, because people obviously travel from all over the U.S. to come to Trail Days. I didn't expect the first night we got there when we rolled in, it sounded like Friday Night Lights with football.
Yeah, the drum circles and the cheering. Yeah, and that was pretty cool.
We asked the parking guy, and you even asked the parking guy, is there like a football or baseball game going on tonight? We just heard all this cheering. And the guy just shrugged his shoulder. He goes, that's the drum circle. It'll go on until at least 2.
Tent City.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was pretty cool.
So I expected a lot of what it was is what I expected. What I didn't expect was that there was such a division between the town and the actual Tent City.
Yeah.
And how Tent City just is in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah.
It pops up. And obviously with parking and stuff, they have a lot to deal with. So the town kind of gets overwhelmed, I think, with Trail Days.
Yeah, and I think the town, to give the town credit, town of Damascus, Virginia credit, they do a really good job, yes. I think, sort of managing what would be, oh my God, logistically.
They can't have more than 3 cops in that town on a regular basis.
Yeah, but how many cops did we see?
Yeah, exactly.
That's on my list. That we're going to talk about that. There were cops from every county in the area. Yeah, it was unbelievable.
It was interesting because, again, from a municipality standpoint, I know what a small what a small town that is, and this probably runs their entire year.
Yeah.
So the fact that we were even talking about it, the fact that we had great weather,
right?
and it had rained, I guess, the year or two before.
Oh God, you couldn't have asked for better weather.
Yeah.
We had sunshine every day. It was kind of hot on
We
Saturday.
got one rain Saturday night.
We actually did have a little blast.
Saturday night, which was nice because it cooled down the temperature. My deodorant melted in the tent during the day. And I came back and the tent that had some BO in it that you had given me was quite fragrant for the fragrant.
Oh, that's right. I gave him a loaner tent. I forgot about that.
It was kind of, I got the big tent, the 2-person tent.
Yeah, I had the one man. Good thing I didn't give you that. That would have been fragrant.
Yeah.
So, and you had probably seen some YouTube videos, so you kind of had a general sense of what was coming. Is that
right? But the parade. What was interesting about it was the parade was definitely the highlight of the weekend, meaning that's where everybody kind of went to. I know I had purchased some water guns for it, but I was too hot during the day to even worry about the water guns.
All right.
While you marched in it, Roger and I kind of went to the bar and hung out in the air conditioning. And then I called you. I think I texted you in the middle of it. And you were like, come out and film us. I'm like, okay, I'll be out there in like 10 minutes. I think it took us 15 minutes to get out of there because I was like, oh, I don't want to leave the air conditioning.
I know. Well, you timed it perfectly. It did get hot that day.
It was.
And, honestly, I had a pretty Mac Daddy water gun, and I opted to not take it because I just didn't want to drag it all over across town.
Right.
It was a little bit of a hike from Tent City to the...
It was a lot of a hike from Tent City up to the Star.
Well, you sent me a picture of your steps. How many steps did you get in? Didn't we walk like 7 miles?
It was like 22,000 steps.
That was one day.
Yeah.
And then didn't we figure
But that was that was not even at the end of the day. That was at like 7 p.m.
Okay.
And then we had walked back to watch bands play and to grab something to eat.
Yeah,
the vendors and stuff.
Well, don't I remember? It's like didn't you have like a 7 mile total?
Yeah,
walk?
we had like 10 miles that day. I had done alone? 10 miles that day. A couple of your buddies from the father with the kid and the wife.
Oh, the fugitives.
Yeah. They had I think they had done. I think he said like 15 miles, 12 or 15 miles.
Wow, I think they'd been hiking earlier though. Right?
Yeah, they did. They did a lot more steps than we did. But, we had a good 12-mile day because I think that day we had walked down to see the vendors. We had lunch. Then we walked back to the tent to get some cameras and stuff.
Then back to town.
For the parade. And then, we were all over the place.
Yeah, and they do have shuttles. I mean, in all fairness, they have shuttles. And it's maybe a 10-minute walk from Tent City to town.
I'm waiting for scooters and stuff to hit Damascus. The 10,000 scooters that they drop every day in Atlanta. Damascus is going to have like scooters, the electric scooters.
Oh, there you go. You're Mr. No emissions.
No emissions.
I like that. How was Trail Days? Be very careful putting that down because it makes a big boom.
Sorry.
How was Trail Days different than you expected?
It was, I had expected more of an organization around Trail Days.
Okay.
So for instance, when we got there, we didn't know where to park. We didn't know who to pay. We didn't know who to talk to. We didn't know where to go.
Yeah. Now, granted, we did kind of arrive late though.
It was 8:30.
Yeah, it was.
It was dark.
Yeah, it was dark.
But it was still 8:30, and we were by far nowhere near the last ones to show up.
No, agreed. I've got a whole section where we're going to talk about the parking because that was one thing that blew me away.
Yeah,
it was a challenge. What did just in general? I'm hitting you with a few questions, and we're going to drill down. What did you enjoy the most about Trail Days?
I think they're just the people.
Yeah, okay.
I mean that was the most fun. It was almost. It reminded me a lot of when I went on semester at sea, and we would it's 500 college kids on a boat, and you would pull into port. And everybody in town would want to meet the 500 college kids that came, and we're in big cities. Like we went to Egypt, Cairo, and to, in Japan, we docked in Kobe. We were in Madras in India.
All right.
So there were a bunch of places that we went, and we were kind of the highlight of showing up.
Yeah.
That was what Trail Days was, just these bunches of people, and townspeople wanted to talk to you.
Yeah.
When Roger and I were sitting at the bar and we were talking to the waitress and the bartender, and she was saying that the place that was at ran out of all the beer.
Yeah.
They ran out of almost every beer.
They were running out of food too.
Yeah.
Later. Yeah.
And then what your friends like waited 40 minutes to eat, and then the waitress dropped their food, and they
Yeah.
couldn't get more food. So
I can imagine it's overwhelming for a lot of the local restaurants.
yeah,
So I'm going to give a quick snapshot of a few things I noticed at Trail Days this year, and then we'll drill down on these after we talk about our ride up. But just to give the listeners a few takeaways, bird shooters takeaways from Trail Days, and this is with me not having been since the 90s. So the first thing I noticed was it is at least 10 times the size it was when I was last here in 1999. It has grown substantially.
is that big?
It's gotten a lot bigger, definitely. Yeah, the first thing I noticed about Trail Days was just the general increase in size. And by that, I mean across the board, people and vendors and everything. Another thing I noticed about Trail Days this year was that really the town did a good job separating, I think, Tent City from the main festival, which I think is a good idea because it's pretty rowdy in Tent City, let's be honest. I also noticed that any registered police officer within about a 6-county area was working Trail Days. There were cop cars from every county on the planet there, you know?
They were all, I mean, essentially it was funny because wherever you went, there was a cop.
Yeah, true.
And I don't think it was from misbehavior from anybody. I think they just needed crowd control.
Agreed. I mean, I think they did a good job of managing it. I mean, I fully understand why they need the presence. I also noticed that maybe hiking 40 miles into Trail Days on the Appalachian Trail would probably be easier than finding parking at Trail Days, which is what we just discussed.
Well, and remember, when you pull into Trail Days, there's a couple of parking lots and you can pull in. There was nobody there for us.
Yeah, right.
It just said lot full. And it wasn't like they even like roped it off. It was open. Lot was full. We found a couple of parking spaces, but there was nobody there to ask, can we park here? Is somebody's parking space or things of that sort?
Yeah, and all the choice parking was long gone, by the way, as well.
Long gone.
I did pick up quickly that Trail Days is truly a business, no question. I mean, you could tell by all the vendors there, right?
Yeah.
Trail Days is definitely a party. That hasn't changed. Tent City, for me, blew me away. Visually, culturally, with just all the different people there. Even they were serving food in some camps, right? Like, you know, just...
You could walk up, and that's what I said about the camaraderie and stuff. You could walk up to somebody's tent and they'd offer you food.
Yeah, exactly.
And drinks. And, you know, what other place in America can you walk to at a gathering of people, like a parade and stuff, where it's not vendors who are just charging you for food, but you've got people with tents and skillets and you know, cheese dishes.
Yeah. Well, hey, well, you remember when we first parked, right? And the guy that we ended up parking with, he just essentially opened up his yard. He was just taking $20 to park in his yard. But,
was it 20 or was it 50?
No, it was 20.
20, okay.
Yeah.
But he probably had, I would say 60 cars in there.
Oh my God. He made a fortune off that little patch of grass.
I mean, it's almost worth just buying the land there just for once a year, collecting the parking fees.
No, agreed. But I don't know if you remember, but we were only there 5 minutes and those two girls had that giant cooler. Yeah. And it was loaded with beer. Yeah. And she was trying to give me 4 beers out of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, you know, at that point we were trying to carry our stuff over to Tent City. So I thanked her. Eventually got one from her later. But yeah, I mean, that's just the nature of folks there, right? A couple other things I noticed just to touch on quickly. I mean, the drum circle, it's a sporting event. Yeah. It's a sporting event, man. It's unbelievable. We're going to drill down on that a lot later. I made a note here that sleep is for the weak or those who camp outside of Tent City.
Even the quiet portion of Tent City
is not that quiet.
No. You're half a mile away from the drum circle, but you might as well be right next to the drum circle. It keeps you up all night.
We're going to talk about that. They do shut the drum circle down at midnight, and on Saturday it was 1. But
I was going to say at midnight on Saturday. I was trying to sleep at midnight.
I'm sure you couldn't.
No.
Yeah.
No.
We're going to talk about the parade too, Gary, because I noticed the parade is like 50% walking and 50% water fight. I don't know if.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't see the whole parade like you walked in it. But Roger and I kind of came out the last minute. We walked the parade route before it started.
Right.
And we were just spent.
Yeah.
And so we kind of walked into the air conditioning.
It was hot.
Yeah.
I mean, it had to have been pushing 90 degrees easy.
I think my watch said 90 degrees, but it wasn't necessarily the degrees. It was the sun beating down on you with no shade whatsoever on asphalt.
Agreed.
And that's what was killing us.
Yeah, two other things we're going to drill down on in the parade, too, is it used to be a lot of locals were in the parade, but locals are not really in the parade anymore.
No.
Maybe the fire trucks and the ambulances, that's it.
The water fights
yes.
are for the locals.
Yes, and it's mainly a bunch of male hikers dressed in drag now, which it didn't used to be, too.
That was, yeah.
We'll talk about that
awkward.
in a second. And then, I think the last takeaway that I got was that when I got home and I started looking on YouTube at videos, there's more videos on YouTube and more interesting content on YouTube from trail days than I think on regular cable television these days.
Yeah.
So those were my takeaways. And anything else we should add to this discussion?
Well, the one thing, if the person who flew the drone at the parade, please upload it to YouTube, because we've been stalking YouTube trying to find it.
Yeah, that was interesting.
And I haven't found it yet.
I just remember a bunch of hikers waving at the drone over the bridge.
Well, and I had my drone, but I didn't fly it because you're not supposed to fly over people. I mean, that's one of the things.
Yeah.
So they might have had permission from the
city,
from the organizers in the city, and it might have been an official thing. I just don't know. But again, I wish I had taken out my drone and kind of flown it from an incognito spot.
Yeah, that I'd love to see that footage because it was perfectly positioned over the parade.
Yeah.
So Damascus, Virginia is where Trail Days is. We talked about that earlier. It is kind of not totally in the middle of nowhere, but certainly not.
It's in the middle of nowhere.
It's not very convenient for someone that has an electric car. Let's be honest.
No.
So let's talk about getting to Damascus, because the drive up was half the fun, right? And back for that matter. But
yeah.
So we left Atlanta, I guess, around 9:30 on Friday.
Yeah.
And it's normally a 5.5 hour drive. We wanted to do some hiking, so we kind of took the scenic route with a quick stop in Clayton, Georgia for lunch. Do you remember the name of the restaurant?
Oh, no.
Universal Joint.
Universal. It was so good.
It was so good. It had a charging station behind it.
Yeah, they had a level 2 charger from a company called ChargePoint, which is I think a collaboration with Georgia Power. And so it was like 3 cents, I think, for the first hour or something. And so it gave us, I think, an extra 20 or 30 miles, which wasn't, we didn't need it to get to Asheville. Asheville was really where we had to go.
Right.
But since we were stopping for lunch, we figured we might as well find a charging place.
Sure.
And this had a parking space. It had about 6 chargers in the back. So, and it weren't Tesla chargers. They were any charger.
Right.
So any electric car could charge up back there.
It couldn't have been more convenient for where we were having lunch. And it was very fitting that right across the street was a giant Appalachian Trail sign, because there was an outdoor store there. So it sort of was like foreshadowing of our trail days to come. So we move on to Asheville, and that's where we had to really get a charge. That was where they had a power charger there. You want to talk about the supercharging stations and how they're different than just taking a regular 110?
Yeah, so the 110 outlet gets you about 3 miles per hour. A level 2 charger will get you about 30 miles per hour. And then the Tesla superchargers get you anywhere from 250 to 500 miles per hour, I think.
Okay.
Essentially, my car will completely charge in, I think, 45 minutes.
Okay.
So it doesn't take that long. And when you think about it, I mean, this was your first trip in a Tesla.
Yeah.
When you really think about it, you're stopping for gas, and you're probably stopping 20 minutes to fill up for gas because you stop to go to the bathroom. And we all know Bird Shooter stops many times to go to the bathroom.
Come on. What are you talking about?
But, it's always in a retail location. The charger that we stopped in Asheville, I think there were 10 superchargers. When we got there, we took the last spot. There were 9 other cars there. So Tesla manages everybody who's in those parking spots. They charge fees if you stay in the spot too long. So they're trying to manage the ability of people to charge their cars, because there are so many Tesla owners out there right now. So they're expanding the supercharger network. Asheville was one. Bristol, when we went there was nobody there.
Yeah, well, it was also like 8 in the morning, right on a Sunday.
It was 8 in the morning on Sunday. So
Yeah.
it was real early, but, I've been to Superchargers in Augusta, where there's nobody.
Oh, yeah.
You
Okay.
know, it's also been full like it was at Asheville. So, and typically, it's funny because you kind of can tie the Trail Days community. It's similar with the Tesla community, because when you pull up, you kind of feel like you know these people.
Yeah.
And people will say hi to each other, and people will, start texting and send pictures to each other. And there's Facebook groups about Teslas and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
the Supercharger network is just one of the benefits that Tesla has that the other car companies don't.
And I swear that this is not a paid endorsement of Tesla.
I know.
It's just Gary's very excited about
I'll
his
put
new
my
ride.
referral code down below.
So from Asheville, we move on to Roan Mountain, Tennessee. For hikers may recognize that as a stop on the Appalachian Trail before you get to Damascus. I mean, and actually the back road drive there was pretty cool. I mean,
It was awesome.
how glad? I mean, how often do you get to travel the back roads?
Well, we tried to.
Appalachians?
You had said there was a hotel where Elvis stayed at,
Yeah.
and we couldn't find it, so we
Yeah,
think it's
yeah.
gone.
Well, I got my picture taken there in 1994, and I was on a mission to get my shot there again, like 25 years later. But Gary and I did our best to try to find the motel, but it's clearly been plowed.
Yeah, most of that town has been plowed. It seems too.
And rebuilt. It
Yeah.
looks like. You think it was worth the extra time though to hit the back roads?
Oh, Roan Mountain with that. Going up Roan Mountain was just. I mean, listen, if you're gonna do a road trip to Trail Days, make
Yeah.
it worthwhile.
Yeah, I
Don't
agree.
just go from point A to point B.
I agree.
You got to stop. And Roan Mountain was a good one because you had shown me like where the shelter is up there.
Yeah.
You can see it. It's a great lookout point. Got some incredible drone footage up there. Got some really good 360 camera stuff
Yeah. Right.
up there too, because I had that out with me. We couldn't make it to the top.
Yeah. They had the road blocked off at Carver's Gap, so we ended up going to Round Bald actually, which is northbound on the AT from Carver's Gap. I hadn't been there. I don't think I'd been there in 25 years.
Since you hiked it?
I mean, I remembered how beautiful the Hump Mountains were in Tennessee, and I had hiked some of that section, but I had forgotten how. I mean, it was only a mile and a half from the trailhead. How beautiful it was.
It was. I mean, it was gorgeous. We didn't see too many people up there either.
Yeah, I mean, there were a few day hikers, but it wasn't
wasn't
over
packed.
the top.
It wasn't packed at all.
Yeah, so basically, what you're telling me, Gary, is the side trip we did to Roan Mountain, despite the fact that a 5.5 hour drive turned into a 12-hour drive, was worth the.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I Roan Mountain was definitely a good one. Because we didn't do that was the only hike that we really did. Because on the way back we were going to do a hike,
Yep.
but